Hopefully everybody's having a good night. I am just now getting involved, and I'm a little bit nervous because I'm working with different paint. Come here, Sif. Get out of the way. Get out of the way. Hey. Yeah, Sif is right here. She's trying to get involved herself. She wants to paint. I don't think she's going to go. Say hi to everybody. There you go. I need to hop you down. Okay. Now the question is, if I move that there. Everybody hear me all right? All right. Once again, made another adjustment to camera and microphone position. Let's see. Camera adjustment. Okay. So I actually found a spot to put it like directly above. Oh, you're right. You're right. Edit stream info. Thank you for that reminder. Cool. I appreciate it. Still getting my head around this one. It's a good title. I'm going to do the Critical Role non-standard color scheme thread, and we'll start from there. So I've got it set. So I'm hoping that the mini will be way easier to see. I think that's going to work out all right. So once again, good evening, everybody. Hopefully we will have a fun time tonight. I'm looking to do Vex'Ahlia, half-elf twin ranger from Critical Role Campaign 1. And I don't intend to do her in the sort of canon color scheme. Good old Delirium in there had provided these minis for me to paint and had provided the Vallejo Game Color paints to do them in. And he asked that I do them not to the color scheme as is canon in the campaign. So I figured we'd give it a whirl and see what we could come up with. It's got some interesting detail. I think this one's a bit smaller than usual, that I'm used to. Either that or it's just a finer cast. I mean, she's got 6 arrows in the quiver, 1 in the bow. Yeah, she's got some like thigh-high boots on or some craziness. Or maybe that's just armor because it's got a cuff around her leg. You can see it down here. It's like a different... But we'll see how it goes. See how it goes. So yeah, I wanted to do this in a red color scheme. So we're going to work with a different palette than what she was used to. But first things first, I do believe I should start, as I usually do, probably going to work on the skin tone first, because there's not a whole lot of it. I think it's just her face. She's got gloves on, full sleeves. So I'm thinking it's just her face. So if I can just get some color in there real quick. Let's see. Vallejo. This is going to be me getting used to a completely different set. That's white. Pale flesh. Elf skin tone. Huh. I don't know if I like those colors. We'll try it. I keep meaning to go back and take a look at the Streamlabs stuff for Twitch, but I have not got around to it. All right. So, these are the ones I'm working with. How's this going to work out? There we go. Elf skin tone, pale flesh. The elf skin tone is going to be the base coat. And I will be using my handy dandy wet palette because it's awesome. And we'll see how it works with these guys. This first time I want to make sure it's really, really shaken up well. Brand new paints. Brand new paints. Again, I'm excited and nervous. Excited and a little nervous. Come on. Shake all the way up. There's some stuff stuck down to the bottom. I think I'm going to get it. All right. I don't need a lot. A tiny little bit. The Vallejo paints come in this ridiculous case. And that's pretty awesome. Yes, we are straight up doing science today. We are doing science. I'm even going to use the Vallejo brush. And this is a 3.0 Torre brush from Vallejo. And I don't have my water glass for rinsing. 1 second. All right, that makes more sense. Now I'm back. Typical. Kind of anxious to get this started, so it looks good and looks good on the wet palette. Just gonna get it on. Again, this is the base coat, so I'm not too worried. Just want it to be smooth. If I get it on other things, I'll be hitting that later. Not too worried about it. I got my space heater on here. Hopefully it's not making too much noise. Because it is real cold downstairs in my basement here, in my little tiny office, because it has not been terribly warm up here where I'm at. Okay. Like I said, there's very little. I think there's very little exposed skin on this miniature. I don't know if that's cloak or hair or furs or what. I think it's going to be the furs. She's got kind of a, you see this fur back here. Okay, good. Good. Alright. Now, I didn't get any washes in the Vallejos, so I'm still going to be using some of my other stuff. I think we're going to go with the flesh wash from Army Painter. We'll be doing the quick shade stuff, so that'll be mine in a second. That's what I'm going to work on in a moment, but that will be last. I'm going to touch it up. I'm going to use some of the pale flesh from Vallejo. Those are the two colors I started with earlier. Again, super small amount of it. Just going to dip it into the wet palette. Hardly make a spot. Get a little bit of water on the brush tip. And what I'm angling for here is hitting mostly the upraised sections on her cheeks and things like that, because the wash is going to get in there and shade up a bunch of it. I don't know if that's a blemish on the model. There's a little bit of a ridge on her cheek. But I think I got it taken care of. It might have just been the paint. La, 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 la. Can't even see her pointy ear on the other side. Catch it over here. Okay. Oh boy. So how many people in chat watched or have gone back and watched or are in the process of watching the first Critical Role campaign? Anybody? And if so, when did you pick it up? I actually didn't start watching until I think episode... Shoot, I don't even remember. They were in the Dwarven City at the time, and they were taking a contract to go down into the Underdark. It was probably 4 episodes or so before they found the Mind Flayer that Vax took a liking to for some reason. I know, Sif, right? Don't trust a Mind Flayer. It's ridiculous. It's a ridiculous thing to do. Alright. Let's do a quick wash on the face. See if I can get to pick out some details. And then we'll move along to some of the other parts. I think what I really want to hit next is going to end up being the leathers. We'll work our way up from all of the in-close bits to all of to other bits. I like that shade. The shade's gonna work. It's not too bad. We'll see how that sets in. There's a little bit of face taken care of. I'm off camera. Was I off camera? Was I over here? Well, that sucks. Alright. Alright, so I know I need to be in this spot right here. This is my target zone. Right there. That's where I gotta be. That'll keep me mostly in frame. And alright, so now for the fun part. I think we're gonna work up. So I wanted to do this. I like this red. This red looks really cool. It's Vallejo gory red, and I'm wondering if it's gonna be the right highlight. I'm thinking that's gonna be the highlight for the leathers, and I think the cloak is gonna get brighter. Cloak is going to get to be a bit brighter. I'm going to do a lot of it in bloody red. That's going to be the main colors. But the armor itself needs to be what? What should we do? I wanted to do it in red, like the armor and the cloak and everything, but that's just going to be all red, so I need something to break it up with. I can't do red and green because then she'll look like Christmas Ranger shooting presents down chimneys or something. So I think she's gonna be in the browns, perhaps. I'm gonna have to do a base, a nice dark brown base. Charred brown might work, and then I'll do kind of a glaze. All right, I'm gonna start. I think I'm gonna start it with this charred brown. I believe I'm gonna work pants. Charred brown. Nice grays. Yeah, plague brown. This one says leather brown, but leather brown never looks like leather when I do it. I don't feel like it's really leather. I feel like it's more, I don't know, diarrhea. Alright, let's get in here. Working. Stay on camera. Stay on target. I'm just going to get in all the cracks in here because I'd like it to have dark undercoats. So, I don't know if she's got a sleeve to a jerkin or a tunic or something under there, but I need to have dark colors up and underneath, or else it's going to look funny. she's got a lot of hair. She's got a braid down the front. She's got a bunch coming down the back. So I'm not entirely sure how I'm going to do this ultimately. Is that a belt? Yeah, it is. Okay. I don't know. SFG did these minis, and there's a lot of details on these figures. Kind of impressed. I also think that there's a lot of details that are most likely going to get missed. Because a lot of them are underneath things. Like, her hand is actually separate and, like, away from her. I don't know if you can see it, but if you look at her right hand right here, I can take the bristles of this brush. I can actually slide them up and poke them out by her chin. There's a gap there, and that's not usually the kind of thing I see. So they did some crazy casting for this model. Okay. So maybe this isn't the best spot for the light. Perhaps I will have to move it. Shall we do it on the fly? What if I slid it a little farther up? Yeah, I'm directly above it. I don't want to get my hands too much in the way. I don't know if that's going to do it. Probably shouldn't be using a detail brush for this because I don't need to get really super duper close. Yeah, it is getting a lot of shadow, isn't it? I prefer the camera spot for this one. I don't know. I just moved it again, so hopefully it's not too bad. Hopefully it's not too bad. I'm going to try the slightly larger brush. This is the 01. This is one of those situations where I'm like, I wonder if I make funny faces when I'm painting. I've never really recorded myself doing it. Except for these past couple of weeks. I haven't actually gone back and watched my own videos. I'm like, I started on the first one, and I hadn't finished processing, so the color wasn't great. I mean, not the color, but the quality wasn't great, and it was making me grumpy. So I stopped, and then I went back later, and it seemed to be fine. But I still didn't go back and watch the whole thing. Keep on camera. Maybe I'll go back to the video and I'll watch it on like 1.5 speed or something like that. I've got I can see what's going on. I have the camera. OBS shows me what the picture looks like, or at least what the setup looks like, so I know what the scene is. As a note, this is why I base coated some of the other figures before I started the stream, because base coating ain't super exciting. It's just me making a big swath of color on a miniature to use as a foundation for the rest of the color, for the stuff you actually want to do with it. I gotta say though, this paint does seem to go on pretty darn smooth. Kind of happy about that, at least. So far, I mean, the skin tones are notorious for being either way too thin or extra chunky, but the flesh tones that I just used a moment ago seem to be just fine. So that's a good start. And the brown seems to be going on without getting brush strokes in it, which is also a good start. Yeah, paint's pretty good so far. Like I said, I mean, I've only used 3 colors at the moment. And one of the reasons why I want to do the red scheme is because I wanted to work with some more red, and red is one of those trouble colors, depending on which kind of red you're using. And I'm thinking that we'll get a pretty good spread of exposure to the red. As a test. Okay, starting to be able to pick out some more of the details. She's got a lot of crisscross back and forth. She's got like a corset going on under there. Alright, gloves. Again, I'm going to use the brown as an undercoat for the red. It's going to be pretty dark. And then I'm going to have to go back in and get some highlights on it. And once again, because this is a base coat, I'm not really worrying too much about getting it on other parts. I don't want to get it on her face, because I kind of did that a bit, but I don't mind getting it on her cape and her quiver and the arrows and the bow and all that stuff. You do not have to worry about that. So who all is on this evening? I know we've got some of the regulars. We've got Delirium and Naffy and my dad, as he said hello. I'm wondering if there's any other folks that I haven't seen before. Feel free to chime in the chat. Love to talk to you. You got any questions, just let me know. And again, if anybody has watched the original Critical Role campaign, I'm curious about when you started, who your favorite characters were, what some of your favorite parts were. If you're in the midst of catching up, pipe up so that people know not to spoil things for you, although it's been a little over a year, I think, since that one ended, so you should have some time to catch up. Oh, so you finally started digging into the powers of the moderator. To be honest, I don't even know what those powers are. I just figured I should have one, and you've been nice enough to show up to each of the painting streams, and I know you in person in real life. So again, just going over pretty much all the spots I'm intending to do red with this brown, and the brown will serve as a nice undercoat for pretty much any of the other colors I want to work with. So if I end up using, I don't know, some bone color or whites or something like that, I can work up from there. Shouldn't be a big deal. But I did a white spray prime, very, very light coat, and then it's a matter of getting an idea about what you want to use for your palette, picking out your colors, and just kind of taking your time and thinking about it while you're actually working on getting the mini actually finished. I used to manage a games workshop. I'm wondering if we got any of those guys here. Some of the old crew that used to go to the GW while I was running it. I posted over. They've got a gaming club that they set up after the shop closed, and I made a Facebook post over there letting them know that I do this kind of thing, and I was curious to see if I get any viewers from there. So anybody from the 131st Gaming Club, let me know if you're in chat. Say hi. I'll never know you're here if you don't pipe up. And I know you guys can make noise, because we used to do that like crazy, scare people in the mall, which was fun. I am almost to the end of this dab of paint, which means I'm going to have to refresh it, but not because it dried out. Have I mentioned I actually really like this wet palette? And the fine individual who suggested it to me, I don't think I've seen in chat. Maybe they were just on break, Christmas break, because I caught them over the toward the middle to end of December, beginning of January. Hopefully they'll take some time and come back. Bring some friends. Start up a conversation. Alright. I think the mantelpiece is definitely going to be some sort of fur. It might end up being white. Either white or, I mean, white would probably look the best. Not sure if you're going to be able to see this, but I'm trying to get up underneath the cloak. So there's a little bit of space back there. I'm just trying to finish it off. And yeah, I guess I'm painting most of her brown, but that's because she's going to be mostly red. from what I've seen, I think the character, the original character, ended up being lots of blues and whites toward the end. So this will be slightly different. What did I do with that? What did I do with that brown? Charred brown. There you are. Yeah, I know. I need to move this a little bit. I think that will help. Tiny bit left to get underneath. Once I get that, get the last bit on the glove. Cover the shoulder just a little. These characters had some ridiculous magic weapons by the end of that. She ended up with a pretty bonkers bow. But then again, Mercer comes up with a whole bunch of like custom magical items, which is cool. I'm all about that. Like, they don't need to be the be-all, end-all. But you figure it's not like somebody's out there manufacturing a very specific standardized set of magical items for people and doling them out to monsters for people to find after they've destroyed them. So I like the idea of it being a little bit varied. Not everything needs to be a +1 sword. Hey, what's up? I was wondering if you'd stop by. I noticed the follow, and I appreciate it. Thanks a lot. So I pretty much go by anybody's chat user ID. I don't necessarily use real names unless it's in their ID. So, you doing much mini painting, Monkey? Hey, that's what I'm here for. That is why I'm doing this. Alright. Basically base coated all with the browns. How do I want to do this? I think, like I said, I think the fur on the collar is gonna be probably white. So I'm gonna start with a gray. It might end up being more gray, but that's okay. Yeah, brand new paints. I got to get so Delirium has been a bro, and he wanted to get all the Critical Role miniatures finished, or at least painted, because he owned a whole bunch of them. And at my typical rate, it would be a whole chunk of money, because I think there's like 20 of them, or 25 or something. So what he did, we worked out a deal, and he got me a full set of the Vallejo Game Color paints, and that's a really awesome kit. And mostly by reputation, because I hadn't used them myself, but they seem to be pretty good right now. So we're trying the science out tonight, and we are attempting to use the Vallejo paints. Oh, it's got a little chunk to it. Oh, sorry. Usually I do this. So we're going to do a base of wolf gray. We'll start with this one. That's going to be on all of the cloak parts. As far as tips go, the most important thing to remember when you're painting is to take your time. Don't worry about it if you go over onto another part of the model that's supposed to be a different color, because you can always go back and fix it. It will not hurt the mini. Try to keep fairly steady when you're doing it, and that comes with practice. And it's mostly just to relax. Like, I'm getting a little bit on the quiver, but I'm going to paint that quiver part last, so I'm not really worried about it. I'm just trying not to get any on her face. I tend to work from closer to the core of the figure outward, as in skin, inner parts, then like clothing underneath stuff, usually tends to be armors and things like that, things that are real tight, scarves, whatnot. Just got to be nice and easy. I work up from there, because in that regard, what you end up doing is not worrying about getting color from under what you're working on. On the bits that you're painting next, because you're going to be covering that with paint afterward. Oh, she got feathers in her hair. I forgot about that. I think I'm going to get the braid so that I can differentiate it from the other parts. The braid's kind of drifting on back. I always recommend multiple light coats as opposed to rushing with heavier coats, because multiple light coats means that it goes on smooth. And that's the most important thing. Keep them smooth. Keep your paint smooth, because then you can go back over any part that you may have made a mistake on, and it won't look like toothpaste. You don't want to paint with toothpaste. Alright, this goes all the way back under here. That's her braid. Got a little bit on the belt, but I'm not going to worry about it because I'll hit that in a minute. Alright, coming along. And the nice part about this is I can just bounce right back over to a little bit of the brown and kind of neaten it up along the edge of the quiver Problem solved. Yeah, I've got a bunch of the Army Painter stuff too. I had got that around Christmas last year, I think. Middle of the year, maybe it was closer to my birthday. I mix a bunch. I have a bunch of leftover Citadel stuff, which I still like. I'm a real big fan of the Citadel foundation paints. If you don't have time to prime, the foundation paints do as advertised. They basically make a fantastic first layer to put other paints on top of, because the paints won't run. It's basically like a primer. It's great stuff. All right. I can't tell. So I'm having a dilemma here. I can't tell if I don't know. I can't tell if this is gonna sound weird, but I can't tell if the breasts on the mini are odd, or if it's hair coming down underneath the arm, or something like the mantle coming down underneath the arm, because it doesn't look right. It would basically mean that her armor bits were falling off. I'm thinking it's probably mantle. Maybe not. I don't know. Alright, we're going to treat it like leather armor. She's not wearing some weird fantasy armor or not covering stuff, getting more armor class kind of business. So, let's see. Shall I start picking out some of the reds? I think I will. Yeah, a little bit. I mean, she's leaned back and she's like this, and it's here and there. It's just weird. I'm gonna integrate it into the armor, make it look good. Hey Monkey, if you're in touch with any of the folks from back home, let them know. Have them pop over. Even if they're not regulars, it'd be great just to chat with them every once in a while. And I'm trying to do this on the regular on Thursday nights, so. Alright. Okay, we're going to get to Gory Red in the Vallejo line. Nice. I also, that's a awesome segue. I also started doing commission painting. So if you need any minis done, I'm in the market for doing that as well. I am currently working on these guys on commission. I've got an Abaddon the Despoiler miniature from 40K on the docket. I've got a bunch of old Battletech figures from the early 80s that I'm doing. I've got some Blood Bowl, and I've got, again, some other fantasy miniatures that were done, that were purchased in a batch by a friend of mine who wanted them finished up. So I've got a lot, but not too much. I'm doing that under the name Chromomancer. I came up with it on a whim the other day, and turns out that the domain name was available, so I scooped that up right away. And my wife and I are working on a website. But I own the domain, so I'm gonna start getting painting galleries up and commission scheduling and stuff like that. So if you guys need any minis painted, let me know. I've got a couple of big honkin' dragons on my shelf behind me that I need to finish up as well. Awesome. I am attempting to be available on Facebook more, specifically for that purpose. Facebook was one of those things I didn't really use at all. I stayed away from it as much as possible. But it's got its purpose. It's got its purpose. And I can be contacted across there. You can either message me there, or I'll be posting once I get the Chromomancer page up and the fan page up. I will put contact information in there as well. But I know B's brother has my phone number. Not that I've been able to get in touch with him. Oh, that'll look good. Facebook is basically the definition of a toxic environment. Regardless of how you feel about it when you first show up, by the time you decide not to use it anymore, it's because it's just become depressing. Am I staying on camera? I feel like I might be staying on camera. So the red's going on fairly well. So far, so good. Fairly pleased. I'm interested to see if they get a glossy finish. Like if the paints by themselves go on glossy, that's going to be interesting. I don't usually go for high gloss. I prefer it to be very flat, but that'll be, I guess that'll be the difference between the two. I do like the Army Painter stuff. I do really like Citadel minis, mini paint line. So we'll see. Could be some of the paints are really well suited for one type of figure, and some of the paints are really well suited for another type of figure. That is always a possibility. There is nothing wrong with it. She's so skinny. All right. Tower's going to be red. So do you have any specific questions there, Monkey? Anything you've bumped into that you've had trouble with? I mean, if you invested in Vallejo paints for orcs some time ago, you were serious about painting minis. That much is for sure. But I'm wondering if you bumped into anything that you found particularly challenging. And were they fantasy orcs, or were they 40k orcs? Or were they Lord of the Rings Uruk-hai? I've got some of those too. I did like that. I did like the Lord of the Rings model line from Citadel. They were more on the scale of this one. They're similar scale. Very, very well done. It's tricky to keep looking back to the chat when I'm working on some of the detail bits. Partially because I get kind of focused on it, and then partially because my eyes have to refocus on the screen. Yeah, I used to do a lot of my priming in black. My suggestion would be, as I might have mentioned this prior to you showing up in chat, foundation paints, the Citadel foundation paints are fantastic because they go on solid. And not in any sort of weird way. They go on smooth, they go on solid. You can almost paint directly out of the pot with them. And they basically change the color of the base texture. They're very much, you can do over black, you can do over white, you can do over gray, and then you get kind of a truer color for whatever it is you're putting on it. They've got a couple of sort of primary colors in there. They've got some reds. They've got some blues. They've got some light grays that go on over a black base coat and help a whole bunch as far as getting a nice high contrast white over a black primer coat. You working on new stuff now? You got something other than orcs that you're doing, or is it just D&D minis that you're working on at the moment? What are you playing? Who are you playing with? Is it the old crew? Have you moved to a different part of the state? I kind of lost track of where you guys all were. Alright. It's starting to come together a bit. That's cloak. That's a robe. That's hair. It's one of those situations where I got a little bit of that gray on her cheek as I was doing the cloak, the mantelpiece, so I can just get back in here with this. That up just a little bit. Hopefully the detail's coming through. Well, that's cool. coming along. What to use for a good contrast underneath? I don't know. I'm going to need one of my larger brushes, because I'm going to do that same red on her cloak, on the outside at least, as a base. One of the things I've discovered recently is wet palettes. And if you do a search on YouTube, am I out of camera? Almost. If you do a search on YouTube for making a wet palette, there is a guy, Tabletop Minions, I think is the name of his channel, who does a quick how-to on making a super cheap and easy wet palette, and I've been using it for a couple of weeks now, and it's absolutely fantastic. It allows you to keep your paints wet for the duration of the time that you're painting, which in turn helps you get smoother coats of paint, because you don't have to worry about it chunking up on you, getting all nasty. The short version is Glad Tupperware-like sandwich box with the lid, paper towels, and parchment paper. You put the paper towels, you tuck them on into the bottom of the Glad container, and then you take the parchment paper and you cut it so that it fits just over the paper towels, but not like super snug to the sides, because then all you really need to do is dump a little bit of water in there and wait for the paper towels to soak it up. And then you put the parchment paper on top, or at least you leave the parchment paper on top of that. It's okay if the water beads up on it a little bit, because it's good for mixing. And then, yeah, you're pretty much good to go from there. It's almost self-explanatory from that point. You just kind of dab your bits of paint on top and run with it. And it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. Because when you're done, you can just put the top on. And because it's a moist environment, it keeps the paints wet. They might separate a little bit, but not that much. And you can use them forever. I just switched out one that I had paints from a week ago that I was using last night. It was fantastic. I feel like she's got a second, I don't know if that's a liner inside, but it's got a secondary, there's like a bit here. I don't know if that's going to be a different thing or what. Let's call it a slightly different thing. It might make for a cool detail. Like some sort of jacket underneath her cloak. trying to get behind the bow. Just tuck it in. Okay, that makes sense. We'll get to that, whatever that ends up being. I think that'll look pretty cool. That red might need another coat. It does go on pretty thin, but that's okay. I'd rather it go on thin and smooth than thick and chalky and gross. So I'm not complaining. Getting there. Do I keep the hair that color? I wonder. All right, what I'm going to do next is on the furs, I'm going to do a little bit of a dark tone. This is the Army Painter Dark Tone Quick Shade. I really like this stuff. I'm going to do a little bit along the hair and the fur ruffles on the cloak because I want to see if I can get some more details out of it so I can go back and then get some highlights. So I'm just going to put a tiny bit of it on my wet palette because I'm not going to use a whole lot. Ew. Let's use one of the GW standard brushes, one of the Citadel standard brushes. This is my old Citadel standard brush. That's your relative size. Wet the brush just a little. Washes are fantastic for picking up details and for kind of speeding some of the process along. It's something I recommend you try and experiment with. Hopefully this will illustrate it, but this is the cloak. And that is the mantle on the cloak. And now you can see way more detail. And the trick with washes is to be generous with it. Don't worry too much. About because it's not going to go on thick. Like a wash will never go on thick. You just put it on there and get the job done. And you can bring it right to the edge of another section of the miniature because it runs to the cracks. And it shouldn't go too crazy, but it'll give you the nice shading that you're looking for most of the time. So that, hopefully you guys can see it. It's going to dry like that. And if I wanted her hair to be gray, then that's pretty much it. Like that's all you got to do. It's a great trick. I love this stuff. Again, just be generous with it. It's made to get in all the cracks. I was hoping that this top down would work well. I guess we'll see. I don't know if my hands are making shadows or other sorts of weirdness. Let's see if I can pick out some of the detail on this bow with some of this stuff. Oh, there's fancy bits. There we go. All right. Not bad. I don't think the arrow's got anything special going on. I just got the Kid Icarus theme playing in my head at this point. It's the bow and arrow. I don't know why. It's kind of, I guess it's because she's red. Okay. Let's get in and try and put a base on that jacket of hers. I'm going to use a darker gray if I can find it. Give me something. Is that going to be a good color for it? I mean, I did wolf gray. I don't necessarily want to go nearly black. This might be okay. Stonewall gray? I don't know. Not sure how I feel about it. We were worried about the condition that these were going to show up in because the delivery was coming, was it Tuesday? They were getting the box on Tuesday and it was 5 degrees outside. We were concerned that if it was left out, that was going to be the end of them. I think I'm going to go with somber. Somber gray. I'll do some edging and highlighting from there. So Monkey, what are you playing? What do you got for a class? Who's running the game? What's the party look like? Tell me about your D&D campaign. I mean, so long as you're still in chat. Cool. That works. That works. Don't starve is fun. Yeah, this gray might work all right. So we're doing this guy right here. Wet the brush, wet the paint, get it nice and smooth. That is always the goal, nice and smooth. All right. There goes the heater again. Sorry about that. Hopefully everybody's week has been going well. Or at least going well enough to feel like it's moving quickly. As we all know, everyone aims for the weekend. Whichever days their weekend ends up being. For those of us that work in later parts of the week or have one of those weird schedules where it's like you work on the weekend but you have Wednesday, Thursday, or Tuesday, Wednesday, or Monday, Tuesday off. It's a hard schedule to get used to. But hopefully work's not too crazy that it's the only thing you're looking forward to. We had some weather up here. We were supposed to play in the third session of a brand new campaign that I was very much looking forward to. But sadly, we could not get a quorum. We could not get everybody to show up. There were some worrisome weather reports. It was supposed to come down pretty heavy. Turns out it didn't, but there was some erring on the side of caution, which is fine. Happens. Okay, I like it. That works. I'm going to need the detail brush for the inside, though. There's the little one. So I want to get right up under here. Go. All right, I need to apologize for 1 second. I need to put on my headphones real quick. Because that Kid Icarus theme song is literally stuck in my head. All right. Where are you? Oh, NES. I have yet to figure out a good way to add that audio in. Still drying down in the corner there. I don't want to hit that just yet. So, let's pick out that bloody red and start doing some highlights. That, and I'd like to do a little bit on the ears. Okay. Coming along, coming along. I'm wondering if these guys are going to be multi-session. What I should probably do is base coat them like I did with the other one before I get on stream. It'll let me get into actually hitting the mini and getting the color down on stream while people are watching. Okay, so this is going to be a highlight, trying to get mostly the upraised portions of the miniature. On the wide spaces it can be a little bit tricky. Because you don't necessarily want it to be all the way. You want to pick up bits of it and then allow it to kind of imply some grooves. We'll get back down there in a second, but you can kind of see how it's getting there. Again, what you really want to make sure you're doing is get it on there smoothly. So a little bit of patience goes a heck of a long way. You want your lines to be mostly smooth and straight. Catch the corners. Anything that's gonna reflect the light, really. Keep the paint nice and wet. So it goes on as smoothly as possible. I tend to rinse the brush a lot just to make sure things don't get chunky. This red is being tricky. It does not want to play. But that's alright. Just have to do it in more than one layer. Again, if I take it slow, I'm not going to rush. Sometimes if you get a little bit on something before it dries, you can actually get it wet and wipe it off. You rinse the brush off, kind of get that wet, dab it off, dry the bristles off, and then you can use the bristles to pick it up off with a spot. Otherwise, don't worry about it too much because, like I said, you can come back later. And get the parts that you might have made a little bit of a blunder on. It's okay. There we go. Now we're brightening her up a little bit. She's got some kick-ass boots. I'm going to leave a lot of this portion sort of in shadow because she's leaned over. I want to make sure I get the bits that are down low. Pointing up in the right direction. I asked my daughter if she watched any of the videos that I did, and she's like, I did, Daddy. But next time, can you speed it up a little bit? I was like, ah. Ouch. Because she's not into 2-hour painting sessions. It's alright. Maybe she'll get there eventually. I don't blame her. Nothing is on fire. Working on getting to the bright red bits. I'm wondering how our hands are going to end up looking, because these are super fine. she's coming along. You're starting to see some more detail in that red now. A lot of the trick is actually the way you hold them, because it's hard to get into a bunch of these little spaces. And I mean, I'm blocking a lot of the camera because I'm trying to get around and into those tiny little spots. Bunch of crazy little grooves and stuff like that. Details and like, I don't know. It's hard to see them. Makes it feel to me like it's not necessarily, I don't want to say it's not worth putting on the Mini, but I do want to, I feel like it's a little bit lost. Like there's a lot of really cool features on this figure, but a lot of those features you can't see very well unless you're picking it up and getting real close. And 90% of the time that's not going to be the case. It's just going to be on the table. But it's still cool. I mean, it's a character mini. It's a special character mini. So, nothing wrong with it. I just feel like you're missing stuff. Alright. Gonna go a little crazy on the big sections of the cloak. Gonna get very, very bright to start. Because we're looking to hit mostly the upraised sections. So anything that the sun's coming down on or from the top is what we're looking for. Figure the light source because while Canon Vex was a sneaky ranger thief, ranger rogue, this one might be something entirely different. We could be looking at a fighter with the archery style. I know for a fact those work out. pretty darn well. Okay, getting up in here. Okay, just kind of let the brush hit the upraised portions, so the rolling points of this cloak, the top of the sine wave or whatever. It's going to seem super bright at first because this red's going on pretty bright. But you just want it to go on smooth. And we will deal with anything that ends up being too bright. My intention is to blend this down. With the shading wash because I love them and it's like cheating. Table side, that's going to look pretty good. What do you mean, F? Need a really good painter to pick them out and add enough highlight tension. Yeah, you want to be real bright, because what's going to happen is I'm going to go in there with the shading wash, and it's going to darken it up considerably. So if it looks super bright, it's not that big of a deal. Like those dark elves I was doing, the highlight color is very pink. And I go in with the that purple wash to shade it down, and it darkens them up quite a bit. And it blends it down to the purple. So you can go in with some crazy high contrast, and it just ends up looking a bit better in the end. Like some of that high contrast makes it just kind of stand out. And once you get the proper shader in there, it looks lovely. Blend that in. Pick out the edges of the cape here. I'm going to leave some of the darker color exposed because I want it to look like it's folds inside the cloak. Push the tip of the brush down in a little bit because I want to sort of soften it at the edges. And now that I've used most of the paint off of it, what that's going to do is it's almost going to give a dry brushy, softer edge to some of these parts that are very, very sharp at the moment. And it gives it more of a texture than a hard line. So now that I've used a lot of the paint off the brush, I'm just kind of lightly letting the bristles kind of open up, pushing them into the cracks just a little bit, because I want that to be a little closer. Pick up some of the edges again. Blend it in just a little bit. Okay. Where is... Oh yeah, I've seen some of them. They tend to be a little bit larger scale. The Citadel minis, the Games Workshop stuff, the new stuff especially, the detail's really good. But they're just a little bit bigger. This is like 24 mil, 23, and the Citadel minis are like 26, 28. So they'd be a head and a half taller than this one, which means, no, what do you think it means? It's just a bigger figure, so some of the details are easier to pick out. So I am going to go over this red with this color. This is the Citadel shade, Seraphim Sepia. Sepia works really well on a red. It'll actually bring the red out quite a bit. So I'm going to take this almost directly out of the paint pot, I think. I think I want my slightly larger brush for this. Dry brush go away. Back over to my large brush. How large do I want standard? I'm going to go with large. I'm going to go with large because I want to hit the cape. Hit the cape up real well. So I tip this paint pot back a bit. Okay. And then I'm going to get in here. Just going to let it blend it in. Just kind of get it all over the red. Get all over the sections of the red, and it's okay if it gets on the brown. It's not something you're going to have to worry about too much. Push it into the cracks a bit. I'm getting a little on the arrow, but I'm not worried about it. So I'll get that later. We're going to get to the arrow later on. I'm off the camera again. Sorry. Move this pot over a little bit. Give me something to work with. Try and get it relatively even. But again, this is meant to blend in, pick out some details. So now you're going to be able to see a lot more of that mini. Close that up, careful, so I don't spill anything. Yeah. There we go. have to get a little bit less down here so you can actually just work the corners of where it's very wet with the tip of the brush that's mostly dry. You can start picking out some of the excess. But I think I'm going to have to leave that for a bit. We'll see how that works out. I'm thinking it's going to look real good. Let it get real dark on the inside. I went back because the wet palette kept my flesh wash, my skin tone wash nice and wet, so it let me go back in and touch that up as well. I like the detail brush. The Vallejo detail brush is very nice. It's very pointy, and it has stayed very pointy the entirety of the night, which is also very nice. Got a little bit. Get off. Doing a little bit of a not quite a dry brushing, but it's kind of like an over brushing. I'm just hitting some of the upraise sections and putting some details on the hair, like the braid. Again, I can go back and hit that gray because the wet palette has kept it nice the entire time. Get some highlight on her hair here. Trying to work on some of the spots that is not too wet. They do have these things do have some interesting flashing lines, though, I've noticed, from the sculpting and the casting of the mini. There we go. It's looking pretty good. Again, it's going to take a little bit for her to dry, but Should be good. I can go back and I hit some of the brown leather that she's got inside, like belts and buckles and stuff. Shouldn't be too big of a deal. Let's see. Give me a good silver. Give me a gunmetal. Should I do silver? Nah, let's do gold. So I'm gonna do. I want brass. Yeah, I want to start with. I'm gonna try and find the metal parts, and I'm gonna do it with this stuff, this hammered copper. Focus, camera. I know I'm asking you a lot. There we go. Hammered copper. She doesn't have a whole lot of metal parts, but it looks like she's got like the end of the belt that's hanging down, sort of like the end cap for the belt, the buckle, some of the strap for the. I'm guessing that's for the quiver. We'll get that as well. And I'll hit that in the last 5 minutes or so. And then I will do a little more detail later. All right. I bet some of the bow itself would look good. With some copper bits on it, copper and gold. Just trying to get in there and get the details for the belt. It's going to be a little hard to see on camera, apparently. I don't think she's got any buckles down there. She's got what looks like could be something brass up here. Maybe a bracelet. All right. Where's that gold? That's polished gold. Oh, glorious gold sounds good. All right. This one is the next step. And I'm going to essentially paint half of what I just did, and I did really small bits. All right. Water down enough that I can get a nice sharp point. We're just going to pick out the very edges. Potentially of belt buckles. I can probably get the filigree on this just before we sign off. Let's go back to the brass. We're just going to gently, carefully get this part of the quiver, and we're looking to get the upraised fancy bits. I feel like this little oval part right here could actually be a gemstone. And I think that gemstone can be green. So we'll get to that in just a second. Alright, that looks nice. Try and get the part that's between her elbow and the edge of the quiver. Poking up over her shoulder. Okay. Make sure that's nice and clean. Go back to the gold. And what we're going to do is we're going to hit the parts that are pointed upward. So we'll do gold up here. Gold on the edge of this. Just enough to give it kind of the glint it needs. There we go. Yeah, that'll look nice. That'll look nice. See you next week. Have a lovely night. Just finish off the edges right here. Now I'm going to do some more on her, I think, because she deserves to have a little bit extra bits. So she's mostly done. Mostly. I'm going to finish up the bow a little bit later on. Perhaps I will record that as a quick 15-20 minute. Put that up later. But I feel like the red and the gold work well. I like the gray underneath, and I'll highlight that as well. Her hair is going to stay gray. I'll get in there with the feathers. I think I'm going to do them probably in blue and yellow. It might go well. It will seem like the gray jacket underneath her cloak and the gold will go, so it'll be blue and yellow. And I'll get in on the bow, and I'll do the bow in brown, and it's definitely going to have the same kind of gold arm designs right up at the front. But yeah, not too bad. I think that'll work out. And again, the wash tends to be the way to go when it comes to shading in cloaks, so that'll look really, really nice. And it looks like they're all drying with a nice matte finish, which will be fantastic. Yeah, I'll pick out some more of the leather details. Maybe I'll come back for a detail session. And then I've also got to do him. So Trinket, I think, will end up having a bronze brass, and I feel like he's going to be like a Kodiak or polar bear or something, which will be nice. But he's not. He'll be a fast paint. So maybe I'll come back and I'll do the details and do the Tivers Trinket next time. That's her so far. Thank you guys very much for coming by. If you have any questions, feel free to hit me up on Facebook or on Twitter. The Vallejo paints so far, my initial opinion is they are excellent. They go on very smooth. And I appreciate that form of payment. So yeah, awesome. See you guys again next week. Again, I think I'm going to start doing it at 8 o'clock instead of 8:30, so I don't run over and bump into the Critical Role stream. I'm also considering doing a midday or Tuesday, so like a midday Tuesday or possibly Tuesday evening, depending on what's going on, just to kind of get a little bit more variety in, slightly different time slot. But yeah, have a fantastic evening. Thank you for coming by, and we'll see you next week. Have a good one.